So we are finally at the last of the my top 100 movies, the last video. So I obviously had the original that was about a year ago. I made my top 100 list, and I with no explanation. And then in like January, I started breaking them up by 10, explaining why these are the 100 movies. And as I've said in pretty much every video, like, this changes frequently. And so I, at some point, was like, in order to make a list, I just have to pick 100 as of this moment in time. And then any moment in time, it could change. But these are all still movies I love. So even if, like, I would put them in different orders, or I would take certain things maybe out, move things in, I've probably, seen movies since that maybe I want to include. We're fine. It's fine. So when I made this, these were my top 10, and I still feel like they're my top 10, but what's kind of funny is, like, I'll watch a movie, or I'll see something referencing a movie that is on, like, my list at, like, 42, and I'm like, oh, that's, like, the best movie ever. And then I'm like, oh, I have it at, like, 42, so I guess it's not the best movie ever, but that's the problem, is, like, I feel like out of these 100, like, all of them I really love, and so, obviously, my ranking kind of can change quickly, but I feel pretty confident about these 10. I mean, again, are they like the 10 if I was to like go back and I don't know. And as I've said before, these are not what I consider the 10 best made movies by any means. Some of them are probably not even necessarily that good as far as filmmaking. This is not like, the best artistic filmmaking. I mean, at some point, I could probably do like what I think is like some of the best cinematography or some of the best screenplays. But I mean, these are my personal favorite 100 movies. And so these 10, obviously, like, I don't have I'm going to be, spoiler, I don't have The Godfather on here. And like, yes, I recognize how amazing The Godfather is as a film. It's just, do I want to sit and watch it a bunch of times? No, not really. Like, it's very beautiful. It's incredibly well made. There's nothing wrong with it. Apocalypse Now, beautiful movie. Like, absolutely stunning. Some of the best filmmaking I've ever seen. I never, ever want to sit through that movie again. I hate the book it's based on. I hated the movie in terms of, like, just how awful it is. It's depressing. There's, like, animal violence. I don't like it. But it's also, like, exceptionally well made. So, again, these are my 10 favorite. These are movies I watch over and over and over. I can watch endlessly. I love them every time I see them. I think out of these 10, I'll go through how many times I've seen them, but for a lot of these, I've seen, like, a lot. Like, I mean, probably, like, 10, 20 times at least each. Some of them way more than that. So, that's just, they're movies that I feel like anytime they're on, I just get sucked into them. So that's why, they're pretty high up for me. So, all right, here we go. So, number 10, and this is going to be contentious. And this is the Blair Witch Project, the original, but, the OG of, like, found footage movies. But the thing with the Blair Witch Project, so if you've seen it at this point, if you haven't seen it yet and you saw it recently, it's hard to really understand because, like, I mean, you've heard it hyped up, you've heard other things, there's been sequels, there's been other found footage movies. So, I get it if, like, you've seen it recently. But so, like, just to kind of give some context, my husband and I we were just dating at the time, but we went into the movies one day and we saw the poster, and it's just like the top of Heather's head and like the woods, and it says, like, whatever, like, on this day 3 college students went into the woods, and they have not been seen or heard from since. A year later, their footage was found. And then there was one quote, it's just at the top, like from, I don't know, Rolling Stone or some newspaper or whatever, and it just said, scary as hell. And my husband was like, yeah. I mean, again, he wasn't my husband yet, but he was like, we got to see this. And, we went to the movies a ton at that point. And so we loved horror movies, so obviously the poster was awesome. we didn't really know much about it. And it came out and it was like kind of limited release. It was only showing in like major cities, and it wasn't wide release at first. And so we went into Boston, technically Cambridge, to see it at one of the sort of like artsy film cinemas. And so, like, to be clear, we wanted to see it because we knew it was a horror movie. Neither of us believed it was real. And, I know like a lot of people are like, oh, but they did this ridiculous marketing campaign, and like they had missing posters and like a website, so it looked like it was real and people thought it was real footage and these kids were really missing. And the thing is, like, I like did not question for a second that this was a movie and a marketing campaign, because the reality is, like, I feel like even like now, obviously, you wouldn't be able to necessarily even pull off this marketing campaign. But if you did, I mean, there's a lot of stuff because people have social media, but no one had that in 1999. And so, like, we didn't have really a ton of stuff going on the internet. And so, it was early days of the internet. So the idea that, like, there would be footage found of kids who'd been missing, whose parents would still be around and still alive, it was just so obviously not real, because it would be such a massive lawsuit if they were releasing this footage in like a year. If it was like 25 years ago, or, oh, this is what they posted, now on like Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or something, you could get away with it. But like, it just obviously didn't make sense. Like, I was like, yeah, the parents of these kids would be like suing, any kind of studio releasing this. So, and speaking of lawsuits, like, there's a whole thing now because like they've done all this stuff and then like use the likeness of these 3 actors who got paid like nothing, and have like 25 years later, they're still like, no one ever like kind of credited them with all the things that like have been built off of their existence. And this movie, like, if you're interested in filmmaking, it's really cool how it was done, because it was so low budget. Like, no one had a plan. Like, really, they basically sent them off with like GPS into the woods and were like, here's some boxes with some supplies. And then they'd like mess with them at night. It was all improvised, or like 99% of it was improvised. So like that, like, and again, that's not why I love the movie, but I think it's really cool. Like, if you kind of get into like looking at how the movie was made, and the marketing was like really unique at the time. So all of those factors come into play. But I just say that because like a lot of times people are like, oh, you probably thought it was real. I'm like, no, we didn't think it was real for a second. So the thing was, it was so amazing because we went to see it and the entire cinema was full. It was like, there were literally no seats. We were in like the 3rd row and everyone was like crammed in. And so the movie starts, and if you haven't seen it, I mean, I don't know how it will work for you now, but if you have, it's like really slow for like 80% of the movie. It's very just casual, watching people hang out, which is really effective because when scary stuff starts to happen, you're like bought in. So it was funny and everyone was kind of laughing, and then it got really quiet. Like, as like the night would fall, the whole audience would get really quiet, and it started getting really uncomfortable because every time it would go to the night, you were just like, oh, I hope it's morning again. And nothing really terrifying was happening, but some scary stuff was happening. And then it just like escalated so quickly in the last like third of the movie. And then at the end of the movie, like, if you've seen it, it like just ends. And that ending, this packed theater was absolutely silent. And the lights didn't come on, like the whole credits, until the end of the credits. And so the entire packed theater, not one person moved until the credits were over and the lights went up. And even then, everyone just kind of quietly just filtered out of the theater. And it was like, I've never been in a movie, like, and I've seen, we saw it like 5 times in the theater because we kept dragging our friends, and then we've rented it, we've watched it a bunch of times, we watch it almost like every Halloween. The thing was, like, I've never been in a theater and had that kind of like audience just engagement and just like how terrified everyone was at the end. And we had to drive home um from Cambridge in this like kind of wooded area, and it was so scary that I was like, I can't go home yet. Like, I said to my husband, again, my boyfriend at the time, I was like, I can't go home. Like, I am too scared right now to go home. So we went to like see another movie. There was like a midnight movie like closer to our house, and we went to just see something else just to like, and like as we were driving home, we were discussing the ending, and like I didn't necessarily put the ending of the movie together with like the interviews early on because I was just like so into the movie and like I wasn't really thinking about it. And then my husband's like, well, when they had this interview, and he started like explaining like the connection, and then I was like, oh, that's even scarier. And then I like really couldn't go home, and like I did not like sleep all weekend. I was so scared. And there's only 2 movies in like the history of film that have terrified me and that I have like not been able to sleep. I've been terrified, like truly, truly scared. Nothing scares me. And this movie terrified me. And the other one is The Exorcist. And what's funny is like The Exorcist as a movie didn't scare me. I was just like, oh yeah, this is creepy and interesting and whatever. It was like later, and I was in college at the time, and I was like in my dorm, and I was like, okay, I don't want to be alone. And my dorm was all singles. So like, I was like, so I came out and like just sat in the lobby and was talking to like the person working like all night because I could not sleep because like when I started thinking about The Exorcist, I was like, oh, that's so terrifying. But like, yeah, like I've only seen 2 movies that have truly terrified me. And I've seen, there's parts of movies that have terrified me. Like, I got really scared in, like, a part of Insidious. I got scared in the beginning of Scream. But, like, usually they're, like, to be just terrified at the end of a movie is very rare. And there's only a handful of books that have really scared me. So, one of the things I think that was so scary about Blair Witch, and the reason I love the Blair Witch Project so much, is that it's like, and the reason I think a lot of people don't like it is that you see nothing. Like, nothing, if you actually were going to break it down, you could say nothing happens. Things happen, but, like, you don't know what's happening. You don't know what's going on. And nothing's really, like, clear. It's, like, shaky. It's in the dark. You don't know what's going on. That is why it was so scary to me, because I feel like I don't get scared in movies because a lot of the time it's like when they show whatever the evil is or the thing you're supposed to be afraid of, it's usually way less terrifying than what I've gotten in my head is going to be there. And so that's what I think was so scary about it too, is that like, obviously that you have to use your imagination. And then also, the found footage does work, I love epistolary writing for the same reason. I think found footage is like the epistolary film, where like even when I knew it wasn't real, but it just, you feel like it's real because when you're watching found footage, it always just feels like it could be real. And the same thing, like when you read an epistolary novel, it's not a true story, but it's just that kind of like, it's real first person, you're not just reading a first person, you're like almost like part of the story and part of the narrative. And so I think that's, the combination. And plus it's just really well done. Like, it's so slow and so like you get so lulled so easily into like, there's nothing actually happening. Here they are just chilling in the woods. Now they're just eating. They're talking about food. Oh, they lost the map. And then, like, slowly things just get more and more unsettling until it's just, like, unbearable. And it's just fantastic. So, again, I know it's contentious. I know a lot of people hate it. But it worked, and I loved it. And I still love it. I've seen it a bunch of times. I am still scared of the movie. Like, when I watch it, I am still at the end of it. And I've seen it at least, like, 20 times now. But, like, probably more than that. But, like, I still at the end am terrified. And that's the thing that's like so impressive about the movie is it still scares me. And that's very hard to pull off. So number 9 is a small movie called The Sisterhood of Night. And this is like, this one I've only seen probably a handful of times because it's not that old. And it's just a movie that's like just so perfect for me. And I think that's why it's here. It's kind of like a modern sort of retelling of The Crucible. So basically it's about these girls who are friends and they are part of what they call the sisterhood. And so at night they go off and no one knows what they're up to. And then like to get invited into the sisterhood, you have to get invited. And then there's like, they leave notes for you and it's like a whole thing. And so the girls tend to be like other girls kind of want to know what like these girls are up to. And then there's all these rumors and there's rumors they're witches. And then there's rumors that they're like lesbians and they're, doing some kind of like sex spells or like whatever nonsense. And so everyone gets more and more like concerned about what's going on. And then someone claims that like she was like, basically like sexually harassed or physically assaulted or sexually assaulted by somebody, and then she puts that on the internet, and then everyone starts like claiming that like these girls know something, and it becomes this whole thing. And then all these people start coming forward with like they were abused and like no one told, and these girls know things about these other things that have happened. And so like and they even use the names of some of the characters from The Crucible. And so it's really like a modern sort of, again, that witch hunt and that sort of like mass hysteria based on kind of hearsay. And I don't want to go into too much detail about it because like it's just very like it's very emotionally impactful. And I thought I have never seen a movie that I think is just so spot on about just like how sucky it can be to be a teenage girl. Because like the sort of whether like the main girls and then the girl who's like kind of like mad that she's not part of it. And then she starts with every girl like you can empathize with, like, you're like, oh, like I totally get why they're doing that. And like, even though you're like, I wish they wouldn't do that. I mean, I guess maybe you can't, not everyone can empathize, but I can empathize with all of these girls, why they do the things they do, how complicated like things are. And it's just, and again, maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe it's just because it's about girls growing up in a small town and, I mean, it's later than I was a teenager, but, it's just, there's a lot, like, I don't want to give anything away, but I just found it very, very moving. And, I mean, it's got, like, a really interesting premise as well. There is a little bit of a mystery, but it's just really sad, and the story is just fantastic, and the directing's fantastic, and I think that's part of it, is like the director, I really like her work because I just find how, like, the way she filmed it, I just was like, I feel like she just got the right, like, just sort of expressions and kind of emotional tone that you need. So it's less of a, like, thriller and mystery and drama than it is just kind of a story of growing up. And it's really hard to pull this off, like the type of movie it is. And I thought it was just so well handled. And I love it. And so again, it's a small movie. It might be on Netflix. It was on Netflix originally. I don't know if it's still on Netflix. But it's one of my favorite movies. Like, as soon as I saw it, I was like, okay, this is one of my favorite movies. And she's one of the best directors I've seen. And, yeah, I definitely highly recommend it. So, It's called Sisterhood of Night. So number 8 is a French movie, and I've seen this a ton of times at this point too, and it's Amelie, which I feel like everyone's probably seen at this point, but it's just so, and this is one of those movies that I think could, like, be really irritating, and you could be like, oh, it's oh so quirky, and I'm not a big fan of that oh so quirky thing, which is kind of like the Zooey Deschanel school of, like, storytelling and acting, and I'm not a fan. And I mean, I'm not necessarily saying that's, like, her thing. It just, you know what I mean. I think, like, she played a lot of those roles, and that usually I find is just, again, that manic pixie dream girl kind of type of thing. But Amelie's not. Like, she's quirky, but in, like, a very real and just, like, meaningful way. And this is just a movie about, and it's not my kind of movie, because as you probably have noticed, there's a lot of really dark stuff on here. I tend to like dark. I tend to like depressing. This movie's not. It's very hopeful and optimistic and sweet, but it's got, like, the right amount. It's, like, not so sweet that it's annoying. It's like Amelie can be sweet and hopeful even though she's realistic. Like, the people around her are cynical, and, like, she's well aware of what's going on. She's not, like, ignorant to these things. She just chooses to look at things in a positive way, and she chooses to try to do nice things for people. And it's adorable. I mean, it's cute. Directing wise, it's just gorgeous. Everything about it. It's just such a great movie. And if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. And if you don't like movies in foreign languages, I don't know what to tell you. I would not watch this dubbed. I just think, like, part of its charm is the French. It's just very French. And so, like, just watch the subtitles, please. All right. So the next one is The Prestige. And this is definitely, I think, Christopher Nolan's best movie. And I know everyone loves, like, Inception and Interstellar and, obviously Dark Knight and stuff. But, like, this movie, and I mean, again, I haven't read the book. I didn't even know it was a book until I'd seen it. And I don't know if it's the book or if it's Christopher Nolan, but my God, this story is so good. It is, I mean, obviously the directing's great, the story's great, the acting's great, like, all of those pieces. But the way, this is one of those movies that just, at the end, I was just like, oh my God, how? Like, it's fantastic. And again, I don't want to say too much because I hate when people, like, give you any hints about certain things, because then they just, like, it ruins it. So if you haven't seen it, you see it. And if you have seen it, you can continue listening to this part. If you haven't, please just go elsewhere to the next movie, because, so those of you who have seen it, the ending, like, it reminded me of, like, The Sixth Sense, where at the end I was just like, how did I not, like, I excused so many things, and I was like, the whole time I'm, like, trying to figure it out, and I'm, like, making excuses for things, and then I was like, you've got to be kidding me, and it was fantastic. Like, I think it's so good when you can have it, like, be obvious, but then also not. And then you're like, how did I miss all this? So yeah. So every time I watch it, I'm just like, how did I miss all these things? So absolutely love it. All right. So number 6, is Italian. And again, this is one that I'm going to say, like, you definitely, like, if you can watch the subtitles, please watch the subtitles, because Roberto Benigni won the best actor Oscar for the movie. So, I mean, he might have done some of the dubbing, but it's just not going to be the same. So the movie's Life is Beautiful. And it is, like, such a complicated movie, because it's the first half is like funny. I mean, it's dark funny, but it's funny. And then the second half is so like emotionally destructive. But it's done in a way where it's not manipulative. Like it goes from but it kind of goes from like a Marx Brothers sort of slapstick to one of the most like emotionally just like heart-wrenching movies I've ever seen. Every time I cry hysterically at the end of this movie. And yet it's weird because I left this movie both hysterically crying and also feeling so like it was so life affirming, which is very strange how you can have something that could be this life affirming but also like destructively depressing. So if you're not aware of the movie or you don't know about it, it's the story of a man who meets a woman. So the first half, the reason it's kind of like fun and slapstick is it's just this guy living in Italy, and he meets this woman and they fall in love, and then they have a child, and it's kind of like the beginning of their relationship and raising their child. And it's all during the sort of rise of Mussolini and then the rise of the Nazis, so all that's going on in Europe. But it's kind of going on, and it's going on. Like, the little things are happening, and it's kind of, he's, like, mocking it, and he just, like, thinks it's silly. And then, like, their son, they go to their store, and their son's like, how come this store says no Jews and no dogs? And he's like, because, his son's only, like, 3 or 4 years old, and he doesn't want to get into, like, this kind of hate. And so he tells his son, they're a store owner. They can say what they want. Some people don't want Visigoths in their store, and some people don't. And he goes, what do you not want? And he goes, I don't like the Visigoths. And so I think they say, like, no Visigoths and no spiders. And, like, he kind of tries to make light of it so his son doesn't know. And then this continues, but they, halfway through the movie, again, if you don't want any spoilers, maybe move on to the next one. But if you want to kind of have, like, some sense of what happens, halfway through the movie, the family is taken into a concentration camp. And the father still doesn't want his son to be scared. Like, because he knows, I mean, obviously he's well aware of what's going on, but he doesn't want his son to get scared. And so he convinces his son, basically, that this is a big game. And so the concentration camp is a game, and at the end, whoever wins and does the best job will win 1 million points and a tank. And it's so, like, heartbreaking to watch, like, because, obviously we are well aware of what is actually happening, but to kind of see it, and you're watching it through both, like, the father and the son's eyes, and the mom to a lesser extent, and the story and just the things that happen. I mean, obviously the Holocaust is, like, awful, and, like, it's always difficult, but I thought this was, like, just a really good way of kind of, like, showing sort of, like, I guess, like, a human side of things. I mean, in a way that, I guess, like, more of, like, an individual story, kind of. And it's also about, like, the relationship and the love between a parent and child. And usually that stuff is, like, to me, I find very, like, manipulative, and it doesn't work, but it really works in this movie. And it's just, I know they were talking at one point of, like, remaking it in English, and I'm not a big fan of them doing those kind of things because usually, like, I feel like just leave it in the original language and see that one. But, I know they're doing that right now with, I think, Speak No Evil, and I haven't seen I think it's Danish or Dutch. I haven't seen that one yet. And I want to see that before, I mean, I've only seen the trailer of both, and, like, the trailer of the English version seems to be, like, almost shot for shot, just set in, like, it looks like Italy and maybe, like, Ireland or Scotland versus wherever, like, the Nordic kind of areas. But yeah, like, I just feel like it's always either disappointing or it just ends up being shot for shot, and you're just kind of like, why did you bother? Like, can't we just read the subtitles? So I think they kind of decided against it at this point, but if you are going to see it, try to watch it in the Italian, and obviously, yeah, try to like see the original version. All right, so number 5, this is one of my absolute favorite movies. I think, like, I often say it's like my favorite movie of all time, but I think like I've only seen it a handful of times. It's pretty new, and I don't know that it like is the kind of movie I can watch as much as some of the old like the other ones on this list. So I have it at 5. And this is A Ghost Story, and it's the very, very small budget one that has Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara, and like there's probably not a ton of people who've even heard of it or seen it, but if you have seen it, it's the one where Rooney Mara eats pie for like 10 minutes. That's what everyone's like, oh, is that the pie movie? This is a very, very like artsy type of movie. So if you are not like an artsy movie kind of person, if you don't like movies that are kind of more visceral than story or narrative, it's probably not your thing. It's very slow, it's very quiet, and it's basically about, there's pretty much like, I don't know, maybe like 20 minutes of dialogue in the whole movie. There's probably more than that, but not much. Essentially, it's about this couple and a tragedy that happens, and then like the need to like stay connected to the people you love through time and space. It is one of the most like impactful movies I've ever seen, and and it's one of those movies that I remember saying to my husband, I was like, I feel like if I saw this in a different mood or just at a different time, I might have thought it was annoying and pretentious, but it didn't feel like that because at that moment, and so I've connected to it. And so I can understand why people might not like it. And I mean, like I said, if you're not the kind of person who wants to watch like 80 minutes of like just images with minimal dialogue, with no like necessarily narrative structure, just more to kind of like, it's about like feelings and kind of how you're reacting to it, it's probably not for you. It's 100% the kind of thing you would see. Like, I think somebody was like, oh, this is the kind of thing you see at like the art museum. And it kind of is. And I'm fine with that. Like, I love that, but like, I get it. I get that that's not for everyone. And so I enjoyed it. This is the kind of thing I love. I like it in books too. So I'm often like, oh, I love this book. And people are like, I don't understand. Like, it's just, I really like things that use a lot of subtlety and still say a lot. But it can be so hard because then you can find things that like other people have that same reaction to, and I don't. I find them irritating. And then they think that, so again, but I know it's not for everyone. So, one of my favorite movies of all time, though. So my 4 are the ones that I've watched a ton of times, like probably at least 20 times. Most of these, like, well over that. They're older. They've been around for a while. I've seen them, they've been around at least 20 years, and I just watch them regularly. So probably well over 20 times. And they're movies I can just watch and watch and watch and watch. And if they're on, I will just watch them. So, number 4 is the only movie that I have never been able to stop crying in. And I have seen it, at this point, I've probably seen this movie over 100 times, and I cry every single time. And this is Homeward Bound. And yes, this is the dog and cat movie. It's The Incredible Journey, but it's called Homeward Bound. It's the Disney movie. It's got the 2 dogs and the cat. And it is like I just love this movie so, so much. I've loved it since I was a kid, and I still love this movie. And If you don't know, so it's about basically this family, and they move, and they have to move, and so they leave their pets with a family friend while they go and like settle in their new place, in their new home, and then they're going to come back for the pets. But then the pets think that they've been abandoned, so they go off on this journey to get to the family, and it's narrated by the pets, but it doesn't do that like weird thing where they like CGI the animals like faces to talk. Like, they didn't have that technology back then, and thank goodness they didn't, because I hate that. It looks weird and freaky. So you know who's talking, but it's like they're just showing animals like doing their thing, and then there's like voiceover from the actors. And Michael J. Fox plays the young dog. I forget who plays the older dog, and I think Sissy Spacek maybe. No, Sally Field I think plays the cat. And again, I feel like a lot of people have seen this movie. If you haven't seen this movie, go see this movie. It's amazing. And like, if you've ever had pets, you'll love it. It's just, if you like animals, you'll love it. But if you've seen it, you know. And so all I'm going to say, like, and again, move on to the next one if you don't want anything spoiled. But if you've seen it, every single time when I'm not, at the end with the hill, and you're like, what? Every time my husband's like, why are you crying? You're already crying. You know what's going to happen. Why are you crying? And I'm like, but what if he doesn't come over the hill? And he's like, he's literally come over the hill like hundreds of times. You've seen this movie so many times. And I'm like, but he better come over the hill. And you know what I mean? Because if you've seen it, and I can't get enough. I just like cry every single time. And it's so happy, but also so sad. And man, do I love this movie. And I could just watch it over and over and over. And it's probably on Disney Plus. So if you haven't seen it, go see it. All right. So number 3 is what I think is probably the most perfect movie of all time. Because I just think like there is literally nothing in this movie. Like, everyone will find something they like in this movie. And this is The Princess Bride. Like, it's got adventure, it's got action, it's funny, it's romantic. It has everything. Like, it's so good. Everything about this movie is so good. And like, I cannot imagine not liking this movie. I cannot imagine anyone not enjoying this movie to some degree. Maybe you're not going to have it on your favorites of all time, but like, it's just one of those movies that I feel like I've watched so many times. I never get sick of it. I love it every single time. I think I love it more the more I see it. And every time I watch it, I'm just like, everything in this movie is so good. Like, it is just such a good movie. The characters are great. The actors are great. It's fun. It's exciting. It's like kind of like nerve-wracking in parts. It's just fantastic. It is such a fantastic movie. I mean, I imagine you've seen it because, like, I feel like everyone on the planet has seen The Princess Bride at this point. If you have not seen The Princess Bride, you need to, like, literally just stop watching this right now and go watch The Princess Bride because it's fantastic. And, like, there's just literally nothing you can say about it except it's amazing. And if you don't like it, I don't understand. I literally do not understand you. So, like, I can understand you not liking other movies, but The Princess Bride is just spot on. It's perfect. All right, so number 2, and this one, I mean, again, this is my second favorite movie of all time, but I mean, this is very much a, like, this is dating me. This is going to tell you what generation I am, like how I grew up, what kind of teenager I was, what kind of college kid I was. But this is Before Sunrise, and it's smaller. I mean, it's Linklater, so he's like, well known now, but it was like earlier in his career. And it's Ethan Hawke, who I just love. I love everything, like, he's in. And I like his writing. Like, I love Ethan Hawke. He's awesome. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's, like, a jerk as a human. I don't know, because I don't know him. But I love the movies he's in. I love like I said, his writing. So I'm just a big Ethan Hawke fan. And then it's Julie Delpy, who's a French actress. So basically, it's a story about these two young people. I guess they're in like their 20s. And they are on a train in somewhere in Europe. And they meet up and they start talking on the train. And then she's getting off the train, and I want to say it's Vienna. And now I'm like starting to doubt myself, but I'm pretty sure it's Vienna. And he is like he's catching a plane the next day. So they decide to get off the train together. I mean, I think he's actually getting off the train because he has his flight, and he convinces her to get off the train with him. And he says, someday when you're old and married and unhappy, you can look back on this and, think, I'm glad I got off on that train with that guy, because I know he would have sucked too as a husband, and like, but you don't want to live and always wonder what if. And so they basically spend the night just walking through the city and just talking about everything and listening to music together and just kind of building this relationship. And it's very like nothing happens really. It's just these two people just talking about their lives and connecting emotionally, and just, it's very much like a moment in time kind of story that like, I don't know how if this would appeal to somebody who maybe wasn't like in college in the late 90s or, early 2000s. Like, I don't know, like, because, it's pre-technology. So like all of it, they couldn't like, just Google a place to stay. They couldn't find things to do. They just kind of went around and just had conversations with random people. And it's just, and I am like very much like, I have this natural sort of wanderlust, even though like I'm at this point in my life, I don't as much, as I did when I was younger, but I always thought this was like just such a great concept. And I always, I like when I used to travel a lot, like that's what we would do. We would just kind of be like, let's explore. Let's see where we end up. Let's see what's happening. Let's see what's down this area, and, not that we don't try to do all the like sort of touristy stuff too, but sometimes like the best moments are the ones where you're just like, I don't know, let's just go over here and see what happens. And like, that's where you find like those cool little restaurants, like, and you get to like, find a little store or something that's just interesting, or a really good view of like a landmark that like no one talks about. And, when we were in Florence, like we got to go into like, we went in this little alley and like got pizza at this restaurant. Of course, it's amazing because it's like pizza in an alley in the middle of Italy, So, but it wasn't that far from sort of like the touristy stuff, and you just kind of like, it's probably cheaper and probably better. But so I don't know though, like, because again, that's like very much what like my mindset was when this movie came out. It was in the mid 90s, and I was a little younger than the characters, and it just felt right. Like it was the conversations I was having with people, with my friends, and with people I met. And I mean, it's a romance, I guess, but it's like less about like the romance and more just about like the thinking and the way people think, and like just these interactions between these people. And they felt just so authentic and real to me. And actually, like, this is a trilogy. So if you liked it, or if you haven't seen it and you do see it and you like it, there's one, Before Sunrise, which is later, years later. And then there's Before Midnight, which is years later from that. And I don't want to get into what happens because it kind of would ruin the first one. But it's interesting to kind of watch how each of the movies like kind of pinpoints a time in someone's life, and the different things people think about and deal with at different points in their lives. And so, yeah, I just really, really love this movie. And again, I don't know if you've seen it. If you haven't, I'm curious if it's like still relevant, or if like you have to be from like a certain, kind of generation, and not just generation, but like kind of like subset of that generation, to really connect to it. I don't know. I mean, Linklater is kind of like famous for like writing the sort of like, slacker alternative kid stories, He did it. I believe he did Dazed and Confused. Yeah. And then like, I think he was Reality Bites or Singles, one of those. And, he did Boyhood. And so like, again, he does a lot of these, very like just philosophical almost movies. And so it can be very pretentious if that's not the kind of person you are, or if like these characters could be very grating, I'm sure, if they're not like authentic to people, but this felt very authentic to me. And then the last movie, so my favorite movie of all time, and the reason I put this on here is because I think this is the movie I have seen more than any movie ever, because I don't know why, but for some reason, like, I will just watch this movie over and over and over, and, like, if it's on and I catch it halfway through, I'll then go and rewatch it from the beginning, but I'll watch it from where I catch it, and then I'll watch it again, and sometimes I can watch it, like, 2 or 3 times in a row, and the movie is Equilibrium, and it's this kind of an action movie. I mean, it's a huge action movie. There's tons of action. It's very violent. There's a lot of action. And some of the action, some of the like fighting kind of has like a Matrix-y feel. And it came out around the same time. And everyone's like, oh, they ripped off the Matrix, even though like they were obviously made. If they came out around the same time, I mean, they were being produced separate from one another. So, but it has Christian Bale in it, and Sean Bean, and Taye Diggs. Yeah, I think it's Taye Diggs. Yeah. And so basically it is the movie that has never been made of Fahrenheit 451 and 1984 and Brave New World. So it's this dystopian society where you are no longer allowed to feel. Emotions are forbidden because they make people emotional. And then, so they take like this medication basically to keep themselves from having feeling. And they go around, and so Christian Bale's character, he's basically like a cop who goes around and finds people who are sort of hoarding art and literature and like music and things that are forbidden because they evoke emotion in people. And so his job is to go around and like destroy those things and burn them and take them in, and then like usually they arrest the people and then they go to jail or get killed. And so at one point early on in the movie, they arrest someone, and he's trying to interview her and get information about the rest of like this rebellion that's forming. And that's it. That's all I'm telling you. Because, I mean, if you've read Fahrenheit 451, 1984, or Brave New World, and especially if you've read all three, like, you know where this movie is going, because it's very much those stories. But it's just really, really well done. There are a couple things that I think people would find pretty surprising. And there's a couple things I'm just not going to say because I don't want to ruin it. But that are really good. So if you haven't seen this, and a lot of people haven't seen this because I don't think it just kind of, I think, fell under the radar for a lot of people or flew under the radar. And like, I don't know, maybe a lot of people think it's bad. I just think it's fantastic. And again, those are 3 of my favorite books. So I love like dystopian stuff. And I particularly love like those stories about like, and especially Fahrenheit 451 and Brave New World, where like, everyone should be happy all the time and everyone should be fine all the time and you shouldn't have art. Like, I like kind of those concepts. I mean, obviously I don't like them in reality, but I like them as like just kind of philosophical points and like conversation points. And so I think the movie does a really good job in that. It's really well written. It's well acted. The action scenes are fun. I'm not like a big action movie person, but for me, I think they're fun because like I don't know enough about action, so like maybe they're not to action people. Maybe they think they're silly. I don't know. I think they look fun. But I mean, again, Christian Bale I just think he's a fantastic actor. Most of the acting is really good. And there's just some elements of the story. Oh, and Emily Watson plays the woman that they arrest. And there's just so many really interesting things that go on in this movie that I do love it. And it's, so I watch it over and over and over and over. Like, I just keep watching it. And the first time I saw it, I was like, this is one of the best movies I've ever seen. How is no one talking about this movie? And still no one's talking about this movie. So, it's my number one. It's probably the movie, like I said, I've seen the most times, and I just watch whenever I see it. So those are my top 100 movies. Their whole list should be available, the playlist, and I'll try to link all of the videos. And then, I'm curious if you've seen any, if you hate these movies. Please don't tell me you hate these movies. If you like these movies, I mean, it's fine. Again, I think some of these movies, like, I get that, like, they're not for everyone. So, all right. So I will see you around. I don't know what the next film type thing I'll be doing. It might be a while. I might do something soon. I don't know. We'll see. I do really love film, but this was kind of a long project that I'm not sure anyone cares about except me. So, I'll be back at some point with something. Bye.